Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. And those of you who listen to us on a regular basis, you know that I try to do a different type of inflection on that time. But if you're looking in the social media stream, or you're soon going to hear through your listening ears, if you have them on, you will see two gentlemen, my producer, John, being the place to be. What's good, John?
Hello, hello.
John and I have been having a very interesting conversation. I want to thank the responses from some of you all. You all don't get involved actively on board, but I send text messages or direct messages. We certainly encourage that. We thank you for your continued listenership, and your opinion matters, even when it's one that is different than ours. We appreciate your opinion. But there is also another good young. He's a little bit sandier on top. He is dark, new specs on, looking into the sunshine, not here in Michigan, the gloomy clouds of Michigan, but he's from the sunny shores of Florida. It is my co-host, Mark Bassett. Mark, what's good?
I know. Good to see you guys again. It's been a little while.
It has been a little while. You've been out there doing rich people stuff again, like we say. Jonathan and I are living these commoner lives, and you are bi-coastal living it up, and life is lifing for you. But we greatly appreciate the time that you're able to give to us poor paupers.
Well, it's one of the funnest things I do, so I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to join you. So.
We give him something to do in retirement. You know?
We're glad
that's the right way to say it, Jonathan.
We're glad that we can entertain you when you have free time. So we appreciate you, Mark. But Mark, so give us an update for those who are continually coming in and listening, and people are asking like, "Yo, where's the other white guy?" That's what they always ask. Where's the other white guy? The older white guy.
Yeah.
What's been going on with you, Mark?
Well, we've just had a string of visitors, really. I mean, we had over the last month, 4 people come visit us. So we had a friend in here for about 9 days. We went down to Key West during that. Then my oldest daughter came in, and then our oldest son and his family came in at the same time, roughly the same time. And we did a big Disney World extravaganza with the grandkids. And then we had another friend come visit. And so they just left last week.
So you have been the host with the most.
Exactly.
Okay.
One of these years, Kareem, you're going to live up to your commitment and come.
Mark, why don't you throw out there? Because I have to apologize, Mark, but I told you I've had personal loss in my family, and it's different. Black folks and white folks don't grieve the same.
Yeah. Okay.
I honestly, I feel that way.
That's a whole show topic, I think. So.
And you said it's a whole nother show topic?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would be interesting to hear the difference.
Do you think that there's a difference, or do you think it's very much the same?
All I know is what I see on like a TV show, or down in New Orleans with the guys carrying the casket in the New Orleans. Exactly. Yeah.
Zatarans, no. Oh, Mark. What do you think, Jonathan? Have you been around enough Black funerals and grief to really have an opinion or a thought?
I think, given what I have seen, it's much more the whole family is involved in every single step of the process in a Black family.
Yes.
In a white family, it's the immediate family makes the arrangements, and then at the funeral, everybody comes together. But I think everybody knows every step of it and has a hand in it, and everybody's in the waiting room of the hospital all at the same time in a Black family, whereas that's not quite the case in a white family.
That's exactly what I would say. Mark, do you agree with that?
Well, I've not been around a Black family closely as they grieve the loss of. So I was going to say, if it's any, I would view it as probably similar as the difference between how white people typically celebrate, a religious service versus like a Black service. I've gone to a few, like at your parish, and how you worship God is fundamentally different, I think. And so I'm assuming that a funeral, which is similar to a church service, there's a similar difference.
Yeah, no. I think there is. And Jonathan, I'm going to tell you, with all of your youthfulness, I think that you have coined it perfectly. And I used to say this. This sounds crazy, but I'm going to say this. I think it's funny. When I was growing up as a kid, I never thought that white people had cousins.
Yeah, I get that.
Do you get it?
We see our cousins once or twice a year at the family reunions.
Yeah.
And that's the
My friends never talked about. I had one group of friends, one particular friend, two friends, and they were the McCloskovics, Brad and Mindy McCloskovic, and they were cousins. And to me, that was such a rare phenomenon because none of my white friends ever talked about their cousins. Now, if you talking to me, me and my cousins did this weekend. Me and my cousins are going here after school. It was like cousins were such an integral part of how
you live close to your cousins. Like I've never lived close to a single cousin in my life.
that's another big part of it.
What do you think? What are you saying?
That's another big part of it is
proximity.
Yeah.
Man, my cousins live next door, down the street, around the corner.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. We were always together. And now
we were never, because my dad was in the military, so we were constantly moving, and so we were never close to family for us.
Same with me as my dad was in school.
Really?
Yeah.
So maybe all black folks we close because we around each other. It was
but like if I look at my dad's family, they're New England, lower middle class, blue collar. They hung around their cousins all the time.
I look at my family though, and that's not quite the case. Even though a lot of them live near each other, they'll see each other more often, like 2 or 3 times a month, maybe. But it's not a constant thing.
In the black family, your cousins are your additional brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So and you were saying this, Jonathan. I'm laughing because one of our listeners, Cheryl, said the black folks don't have funerals; they have homegoing celebrations, and that is so good. That's what we call them, a homegoing celebration. Now, what's funny though is so all of my cousins were like brothers and sisters, especially for me, who was an only child up until the age of my parents decided something crazy at 16 to have another kid. Surprise! But they were cousins, and so my aunts were not aunts. They were additional moms. And so when you talk about a funeral and who's involved, you got to have all of your cousins because your cousins are your brothers and sisters. Your aunts are additional moms. So everybody's a part of that process.
There's a difference between the funeral and just every step of the way. That's what I'm saying is, when my great grandma died, all the cousins and stuff, we were all in the waiting room. But I just get the impression that from a black family perspective, everybody is there.
Oh, everybody is there, and we all need an update, and we're all not leaving.
Yep.
And we're all, we're sending a person. That is exactly that familial bond, and that it's not just about your nuclear family, but it is your extended family is just as important as nuclear family. And I remember a lot of times growing up in school, teachers didn't understand that nuance. And if you don't understand how black families, or even Mexican, Latino American, their families are very much the same. If you don't understand that, you're saying, well, we will excuse an absence for immediate family. Well,
yeah.
My aunt, my cousins, they're like, and I see those things even with employment. So those are just kind of cultural things that are really funny, but it's funny that you picked that up, Jonathan.
Now, when we talk about upbringing and proximity, especially, I think that's an interesting thing that we touched on there.
Yeah.
Is that a big priority? Because in a white family, it's, I'm going to this place for this job, and it's nice to be near family, but that's not as big of a priority. Is that something that's like, oh, but then you're leaving the family area, like geographically?
Okay, let me say this, Jonathan, because I think that is, in terms of how historically it's been, you're absolutely correct. And my mom is one of 10 kids.
Yeah.
The majority of those 10 kids have all stayed together because they were around mother and dad. And then especially as they got older, we got to stay close to mom and dad.
To have a family with 10 kids and more than 3 of them stay is unusual for a white family.
So it's been 8, mostly 8 of them stay, and 2 of them have been away, and they have historically. And so when one additional went, another one would come back. So I grew up having like 7, 8, sometimes even 9 uncles and aunts that were all present. They all thought that they were additional parents. And so in terms of the village concept, they had such a strong influence on the decisions, on what was going on, because you shared with your mom that your mom talks with her sisters and brothers about it. And now everybody has their opinion on what you should do. And it was a part of how life happened. And so when life moments take place where you might have a funeral or something else, those things, they were a part of it because they've been such an integral part of your life. And I think that it's one of the things that I think makes growing up Black beautiful. It's one of the things.
Oh, sorry.
What's
Sorry.
that? What were you going to
I was
say?
going to ask you a question. You finish up. Sorry.
No, it's one of the things that I think growing up in big Black families is so beautiful. And I know you've all seen my big fat Greek wedding. I could relate to everything in the wedding because that was how life was. Culture and family, all of it was a part of how we grew up. Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say sometimes again, this is where I tend to go because I think people are people and families are families. As the African-American Black population becomes more and more middle class and becomes more Black people become professionals, do you see what's happened to like white families where, okay, my son's going to go to college now, he's a professional, he's got a great job opportunity in LA, he's going to go to LA for that. Do you see it evolving the same way in the Black community, you think?
Absolutely. So my younger cousins, and there's a less fear, right?
Yeah.
You're around family, there's a safety, there's a bubble that exists there. If you're coming down on hard times, family's there. And you don't venture off as much. But what I see in the younger generations of my cousins, and even my brother, there is a fearlessness that exists and a desire to do my own thing, which is very different culturally from where we come from. And so now they're moving to Texas and they're moving to California and they're moving all over the place, right? And traveling more, which is beautiful, but it changes the dynamic of how we see family and what does the family unit look like.
How is that received by the older generations? What did they think about it?
Well, you know what? It's interesting because I think that they accept it, but I think what's different is the familial bonds and the connections. Like where cousins were like brothers, now cousins are like cousins. Oh, that's my cousin. Because we're not together. You don't have that same centralized, localized connection every day that you had before. So I think that's one of the things I wish we could do a little less of, but I think that with opportunities and access and all of those other things that we talk about, that's one of the changes that comes along with it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Father of 7, one of the things, my kids, as you know, are basically from San Diego to Boston and in between. And I have not had everybody in the family together in one place since 2019. And so I've had 90% of them there, but not all of them there. And so that's why I'm doing the Hawaii thing next year. Actually, it's people tend to jump through hoops to go to places like Hawaii. So,
which brings us back to why we got here, right? So Mark has been going. He's been in California. He's like, Kareem, you got to come out. And Mark is really good. I love Mark and Mary. And Mark now he's in Florida now, on the southeastern shores of Florida, over there chilling. Are you on the Gulf side, Mark?
No, I don't like the Gulf side.
You're near Cocoa Beach.
I'm in Palm Beach, basically.
Palm Beach. Okay, a little bit further. Yeah. But anyways, he's down there. He's like, Kareem, you're coming, and I planned to come. I really did. It did not work. So Mark says, I'm sure that you and Jonathan don't want to come and visit, but I extend the invitation. Next year, we'll be spending some time in where, Mark?
Hawaii.
Hawaii. Yeah. And he doesn't know it, but Jonathan and I have been under the table texting back and forth, making plans, trying to figure out the cheapest flight to Hawaii. No, but Mark, I think that I definitely think I might be able to find space for Hawaii. What about you, Jonathan?
Well, that's what happens when you go to a place like that. Magically, people make that happen. So.
I'm available.
I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. I'm too busy.
Jonathan is too busy, but Mark, I think you even tap danced onto something. I think that you caught me, and I think there's probably a number of our listeners that are out there. They're like, "Hey, if they can't go, we certainly will." But so this is 2026, or when is this happening, Mark?
2027, probably May, June timeframe of 2027.
May, June.
Yeah.
Jonathan pulls out his planner just in case. But Mark, I definitely Hawaii is a place I've sent my family. I've planned trips for family there. I had a big birthday celebration I planned for all of my aunts and I wasn't even there. So I'm working with a friend of mine is a travel agent out there in Grand Walea. I think there's the Grand Walea Resort.
Wildlife, probably.
Yeah, you know, he says it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, and I've done this and have never actually been to Hawaii.
I always tell people if you have to go there at least once. It's such a unique, interesting place to go visit. You have to do it at least once. So
we'll plan to do that. So our conversation on last week, we're bringing Mark into this conversation. I think it's interesting. We have had real conversations about, and I've turned the table and turned over the reins and just kind of let you guys ask some questions about things that we hear on the radio, questions that come up in direct messages, and certainly things that we might hear on other channels or other programs from WSGW. And I think that it's interesting that there are a lot of things about Black folks, white folks just don't understand. And so we want to give them that opportunity to ask those questions. And I'm open. I'm for this all day long. But before we do that, and it looks like we're probably going to get into this on the other side of the break, because I remembered that I want to throw out there for those who are listening. And some of you say we don't know who Chili and T-Boz and Left Eye are, but there is a group by the name of TLC. TLC is the largest and highest ranking group, artist group, whatever, female group, I think, of all time. And they did something like, no, I don't want no scrub, and
Waterfalls.
That's the one. So don't go chasing waterfalls. Highly acclaimed group. They also are now doing a tour with, I think, the greatest female group of all time, which is En Vogue, which everyone knows them for their harmonies and all of those other things. And they're partnering with the biggest selling hip hop group, female hip hop group of all time. So women groups, Black women empowerment all the way around. TLC, Salt and Pepper, which is that rap group. They are the ones that paved the way for all of these other groups. And then En Vogue, which is the biggest R&B group. They're on tour together. They've announced this tour. They did a highlight on some music show program. Phenomenal. I was like, this is going to be stellar. I might even want to buy a ticket for this one. So it's looking to be a blockbuster tour, right? In the midst of all of this, a little bit of controversy, Chili reposts a video of the conspiracy theory of Michelle Obama somehow going and becoming a man, or whatever it is, about disparaging to Michelle Obama. And
was she always a man, or she became a man? What is the theory?
She was a man that became a woman.
Got it.
Is the theory.
Okay.
And so Black Twitter is going crazy. And they're like, yo,
there's still a Black Twitter.
Oh, this is
Wait
what
a
we
minute. There's a Black Twitter.
Mark, we ain't got time for that.
There's
today.
Still Twitter.
Yeah, there's Black Twitter, and Solange Knowles owns it. But anyways, Black America is going crazy online. It is a thing, because how can you be a part of Black culture? How can you make such a powerful living and a lifestyle off of Black music, Black entertainment, and be an icon in the industry, and then go against what is Black royalty? President Obama and Michelle Obama are Black royalty, the first ever, right? And so that's been the thing. And so this concert, there's questions about, do we cancel the concert? Do we buy tickets to the concert? Are they going to get blacklisted? Do we steal their Black card? What are we going to do about that situation?
I thought blacklisting was a good thing for them. No, it's not the same.
Yeah.
No, not here.
Okay.
But that is a real conundrum that they find themselves in. She's come out, she's apologized, but they are not letting up. People have been doing the research. There's one where T-Boz is now saying, yeah, my girl, she voted for Donald Trump twice. And there's other things where she's donated, and I'm kind of in this space like this. People can vote for whoever they want to vote for. I don't get, you do what you want to do. But we do have to be aware that sometimes how we vote and how we stand in those places, people are going to have issues. My thing is, be strong enough to be able to withstand the storm. Is it a crime for Black folks to be voting for Donald Trump? Mark, what do you think?
Of course not. Just like it's not a crime for a white person to vote for Barack Obama. So of course not. I don't agree with it, but like you said, I think people should vote for who they think is the best.
What do you mean you don't agree with it, Mark?
What's that?
What do you mean you don't agree with it? Because I agree with you. I don't agree with it, But
agree
anyway,
with Donald Trump. I don't think he's a good president, but it's her right to vote for whomever she'd like to vote for. So I don't have an issue with it. And I continue to buy and music of people. I don't really like their politics historically, and that doesn't stop me from buying their music. So
what about Black America having issue with the fact that she's supporting Donald Trump, considering the impact that has been purported on him and Black women jobs?
Well, I mean, again, I think ultimately it's the same issue that you've dealt with on the flip side of like white actors who feel like they get blacklisted because they support Donald Trump.
Yeah,
it's kind of the reverse. And so I don't think ultimately, who you buy music from in this case, if you want to let that stop you from buying their music, that's your prerogative. I don't think someone should be ostracized for their opinions other than in extremely unusual or rare circumstances.
My reaction to that whole thing is to sarcastically respond, no, you're right, Kareem. She should just stay in her lane and not go outside of this intellectual diversity box that Black people are supposed to live inside of. And everybody has to go along with that.
Well, yeah, I don't believe that you should, go along to get along. And I like diversity of thought and diversity of people.
As far as a personal brand move goes, that was dumb.
It was the dumbest thing on the planet.
For the pocketbook, but
yeah. So I think that this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. My thing is, she has a strong fan base. People love her. I think that sometimes we say that we're going to stand on the side of history and forget about other things. We'll see what happens. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more of USG.
You're listening to United Shades of Grey on WSGW.
This is Kareem. We're back with more United Shades of Grey. Now that we've gotten all of the entertainment out the way, we're going to get to these conversations. We've been having real strong conversations. I've been turning over the reins to my co-host, my producer. And so we're going to continue, Jonathan, on some of those questions that we've been talking about, things that are very different and getting an honest perspective. And I like people to be able to interrogate me since I spend so much time asking questions of other people. So go ahead.
Okay.
He said, okay.
I'm going to start. Don't take this question the wrong way. We're having an open and honest dialogue.
Boy, that's an interesting preface to the.
That's a great way to open up the question.
Yeah, no.
Now I got an attitude already.
Why is?
Go ahead.
Why are Black people late to everything?
But that's, Jonathan, come on, that's not really true. I
think it's not really true, but that's the perception that's out
there. My personal data points say that it is. So.
Okay, no, okay. So go ahead.
That is a perception that is out there, and that's something that's like, well, kind of what else did you expect about a lot of things?
Now I'm going to tell you something. There are going to be a lot of Black folks out there like, that is so racist. But I'm going to say this is why. Now, for Kareem, I think you may have hit on something. But I have to explain why that is for me. And it's a learned behavior.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
Because of what you just said.
Yeah.
My strategy, the last episode and this one, is to take kind of what I actually think and go 2 or 3 steps further.
No, absolutely.
And ask questions from that perspective.
Well, and understanding, I asked you to do this, to ask the questions that other people may be asking. Yep. So that's what we're doing. But I'll say this. That is, we call it CP time, right? Colored people time or Black people time, whatever you want to call it. But the fact of the matter is, there are many Black folks that are around me that I drive absolutely bananas. My mother being one of them. I have an uncle who is like, my grandmother never.
And you drive them bananas because you're not punctual? Or?
I'm creative in getting to places in terms as it relates to time. I'll say it that way, Mark.
Okay.
But they are very time conscious. There are so many Black people that are very time conscious. However, it's always the small percentage that kind of that really makes the statement. And it's the 2, 3 to 5 to 15 to 20% of us, like myself, who are creative in time. Now, when I go to Jamaica and I go to the Caribbean They call it Jamaica time or Barbados
Hawaii,
time.
Hawaii, it's island time.
Yeah, so it is the idea that we are not going to be a part of the rat race. We're going to get there. Hey, it's never too late to make you want to make a good impression by showing up and capturing the attention. But yeah, we do get creative with time. Some of us do, not all of us.
Okay.
That's a funny way to start this off.
We had to start with a little bit of a laugh, I guess.
That is funny.
But I'm going to switch gears then and ask kind of the question that I asked at the end of last show. We didn't have a whole lot of time to get into it.
Right.
And you gave me your opinion on it.
Okay.
But I'm asking for kind of the opinions that you have heard from community members.
What's the talk in the village?
Yeah, what's the talk in the village? That's a good way to put it. How does Black America feel about the advocacy push going from in support of Black people to other groups? I'm talking LGBTQ, Latinos, especially with current events being what they are. What's the opinion on that?
I'm gonna, and this is I think the real deal, and I think that's a really good question. I'm glad you came back to it, because I think that as a people, because we have been denied so many freedoms, I think for the majority of our time and existence in this new land, it became a thing that, hey, when we get through the door, you coming through the door too. And so if you go back and you look at some of those individuals who are part of the civil rights movement, you're going to see Cesar Chavez. You'll see a number of Jewish brothers that were out there, a couple of different Jewish brothers, but it was a coalition of folks that were there. And the idea, women, and people don't know this, but women played such an important role of making sure that the civil rights movement was able to be met. And so I think the idea was that as Black people gained these freedoms, that they would then keep their foot in the door so other populations and people groups could come through as well. Now, I will say that there are groups of us, some of our cousins, that are, at a point, they're like, wait a minute, we keep bringing in, all of these, we allow all of these immigrants to come into our nation, and not just those who are coming across documented, and I like to say undocumented instead of aliens, but undocumented, documented, not just those, but other folks come in and they receive benefits from our government that our government won't recognize that Black folks should probably have. When we look at some of the tax exemptions, and we see generations of folks who will come over, they'll live in a particular house. One person will own a business. After that 7-year period of that exemption, another member of that family then owns that business and gets that. And so they're creating a generational wealth off of a system that the U.S. has created that African Americans don't have, descendants of slaves don't have. And so there is a push of some people saying, listen, I'm tired of us becoming second-class citizens over a fight that we started. We need to sometimes look internally and focus on the issues that are very important to our community. And I don't have a problem with that. I see the importance of that. And I think that being able to stand up and voice your opinion for your people is important. But it is real.
Yeah. How do you handle that diversity of thought, I guess, in the Black community? Because like what we were talking about before the break, someone kind of bucks the trend or goes a little bit off where most people would assume they are. How does that kind of get handled and
well
received?
The thing is this: Black folks, like no other race, we're not a monolith, right? So there's great diversity in where we come from. There's diversity in history. Even if you go and you do your 23andMe, you go and do your 23andMe or what are those ancestry.coms or whatever those things are, and you do your testing, we don't all come from the same country in Africa. And I think that is one of the biggest misunderstandings for people of color, people in the world, right? We think that Africa is a country when in fact it's a continent full of many different cultures many different.
I'm going to push back on that though, and say that the African American culture is its own thing.
No, it is. I'm not disagreeing with that. But what I'm saying, and when I say that, is that with that diversity and Black folks who are here in this part of in the U.S., the diaspora that comes from that. And so here in the United States, we have people that are coming from all parts of the country. So we have a history that is shared by slavery, and our experience, and I say this all the time, is like no other immigrant to this nation. And I hate to use, I'm not going to say that we're immigrants. We are natives to this land because we are a part of the founding population. So our experience is very different. But even in that people group, we have people that are from Sierra Leone that when they fill out their history, we have people who are part of white culture because they are products of the incestuous relationships and things that took place. So we're very different. And then even from that perspective, some Black folks that are here in the United States, when they follow, they don't go back to slavery. They come back to free Black people, and they're from families who are enterprise and they have history of education. So as we grow and we multiply and we extend and we expand and have these different experiences, there is a great diversity of thought in terms of who we are as a people, how we move forward, and how we see those things. That's why we have to be very careful as Blacks that we don't speak for Black America, but we speak for the Black experience that we have had in this America.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Back to the question that I had asked. I know when white people have disagreements,
Yeah.
Kind of how it gets handled, especially like I'll say like in a family group or in a neighborhood.
Yep.
It's, oh, that person thinks that. And it's very passive and just kind of hush hush. Is it the same way in a Black community?
It's different because of the struggle. And so what I mean is this: there is a perception that we as a people have to stick together because we have come out of this struggle, we've come out of this situation. And I think sometimes, and we've heard about trauma bonding, right? So there is, I think, a bond that African American descendants of slave have that goes back to the point of slavery. And some of us are like, well, I've had an option, an opportunity. I no longer experience this chili of TLC, possibly, allegedly, Nick Cannon allegedly, OJ Simpson allegedly. My experiences have been different. I don't want to hold on to that experience. I don't want to be bound to that trauma experience. I want to live the American dream. I want to do these things differently. And so they explore a path that is very different. And so I think that in any group, the collective of that organization will look at it like, are you no longer associated with the struggle? And so there is that conversation. There is that eyebrow being raised that exists in parts of our country. But I think that as a people, we've embraced the fact that we are not the same. All of us are not the same. That we've embraced the idea that diversity, even among African Americans and the African American experience, from the diaspora to this new world, from the bondage of this new world to the freedoms that we now experience, is a good thing. And I'm one of those, I espouse to the idea that as much diversity that we have, and using that diversity, because I think diversity, as I said, in Black and white situations, diversity brings the greatest thoughts, the greatest ideas, and the greatest plans to the table.
I got a question for Mark now.
Mark.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Just hold on.
Mark ain't got his Black card. Mark is going to a Black church. He's had macaroni and cheese.
I think
we're still working on him getting invited to the cookout. Go ahead, Mark.
As you know, I was actually bused into the inner city of Norfolk, Virginia to desegregate a Black school in 6th grade. But
in the DMV.
Yeah. At what point,
Mark, you can't get much blacker than the DMV, but go ahead.
As time progresses, is there ever a feeling that we're using that what happened decades ago or centuries ago as a crutch versus, at what point do you need to let that go? I guess. Is there a discussion about at what point do we need to let that go?
I don't know if there's a discussion, but I'll tell you my response: never.
Yeah. Really?
I don't. No, I don't. And
I actually think that I don't think you should forget, but sometimes I wonder, does it become a crutch or an excuse?
Well, no, I don't think that it's an excuse, nor do I think that it's a crutch. I think that is. I think it's something that nobody wants to remember anything that's bad of your history. But I think that it's an important place to understand Black culture, to understand. It's interesting because I was having this conversation with someone that was in politics, and I was sharing with them about the impact of policy and how these things have been. We didn't just go from slavery to freedom. We went from slavery to Jim Crow. We went from Jim Crow
Yep.
to black laws. We went from black laws to policy from the nation that was against. We went from those policies to segregation, to mean that I'm not going to finance this side for you. There was a statistic that came out that after slavery, blacks owned 14% of the nation's free land in the United States. Hundreds of thousands of acres. That has now demolished to 2% of the land. Why? Because of foreclosure and this is why I talk about policy is so important in the process. And it's because once they were free, they had this land. Some of them owned land before. Others of them received the land, worked for the land, bought the land. 14% of that land now down to 2%. When we understand, and we talk about this all the time, Mark, generational wealth is often tied to land and housing, right? But what would happen is, if I now have this land and I want to build a house on this land, that means I got to go to the bank and get a loan. But if the bank says you own land, I'm not going to finance that loan. No, you can't build a house. Now I am holding this land that I cannot develop, that I can't do anything with, because the banks have outlined and created systems where they won't loan to black folks. And this is a real thing in our history. So it goes into foreclosure. And then that same land that they said was not viable for a loan for that black family is now owned by a white owner. And the bank will loan to that white owner the land in order to develop that land to do what's necessary. This is what I mean, and why historics and policy and history is so valuable and so vitally important to be remembered, because it gives a context to why certain population groups in our community are where they are. And all of it isn't just racism. All of it isn't just slavery, but some of it is Jim Crow. Some of it is black laws. Some of it is politics. And I always say this, whenever blacks were making great strides, there were Supreme Court rulings, Dred Scott, that would make a major impact and take us back a few decades. So there is an importance to remember, so that we understand that these things, black folks aren't just lazy. They're not here just because they're lazy, but there's a historical reason why these things exist. Now, we use that as a tool to work harder, to fight for more advancement, for equality and those things. I've never allowed the things that have happened in my past to stop me from achieving things for my future.
Okay. Jonathan, go ahead.
Well, I want to follow up on that, actually.
Okay. Right.
Forget you, Mark. Forget the question I had for you. What is the messaging to the next generation about that? Because there are certain perspectives from the right, especially, that black kids are being taught, you're oppressed, you're oppressed, you're oppressed, you're oppressed. So what else are they going to think other than I'm oppressed, this is terrible, and kind of become hopeless because of it?
I would ask, like, those same people which families they sat in where they taught lessons of oppression.
We're talking about kind of how things are taught in history class.
So I think that issue is the same. We don't have the same issue when we look at women. You know, you're oppressed, you're oppressed. It's the same argument that women have had to deal with, but yet women understanding that their strive for equality has not been met is not problematic. Our nation has a real issue and a real problem that is in the DNA of how this nation was created when it comes to dealing with its original sin, which was slavery. And I think that we want to tell the oppressed that you should forget about the oppression, but we would never tell a victim of a sexual crime to forget about your abuse and move beyond it. It is trauma in its very essence and how it is used. And perpetrators or individuals who resemble the person who created the perpetrator, or even family members of that, should never be able to tell the victim how to get over what they've been victimized by.
But doesn't that lead to the thinking of using it as a crutch and using it as this is this is the reason things are as bad as they are, and
What
I am
are,
owed.
At some point, you have to move on from trauma,
well, no, we
or
don't.
else you'll live in trauma.
We don't have to, and so that's one of the things, because no one has the ability to tell us what we have to do.
Well, sure.
And,
I would
and then
argue you'll to
go
achieve
ahead.
your full, I would argue that to achieve your full capability, you have to be aware of trauma, but you have to move on from it. You have to let it go.
But this is the thing, Mark. The reason we have been able to achieve the things and do the things that we have done in this world is because understanding history. The idea is Sankofa. You remember the past, and as you reach forward. And I think that as a people, we have to do both, because if not, we will raise a generation of people with white privilege who do not understand the Black experience and will think that life is that is how life has been for everyone that is a part of it. But I think that when we teach that we are people who have been oppressed, we are teach a people that we are people who have come from the degradations and the bowels of this nation and have worked. We build a sense of pride that I can, no matter what is in front of me, that needs to be. I think a part of what we're seeing now is a lack of the teaching of the trauma, the perils, and the problem, and teaching it in a way that you should be proud of where you came from and whence you've come, and understand that if it did not stop them, that it should not stop you.
Yeah, and I would argue that's different than living in a constant state of trauma. Being aware of past trauma and the struggle you had to get out of it.
I don't live in trauma.
Yeah, it's fundamentally different than constantly living in a state of trauma. And that's kind of what I say. Like you have to acknowledge the trauma, but you have to move on from the trauma in order to continue to progress.
Yeah, if you don't heal, you can't grow.
I think that component, though, that hopefulness and you can overcome, is a component that's missing in a lot of contexts, though.
Well, I think that white people think that it's missing because when we talk about it. And I think that's a part of the problem. I talk about Black joy sometimes. And what I mean is that white people don't understand what it is like to be in a place where you are truly a minority. And then they also don't understand that Black people's ability to move forward and to have joy can be possible without the presence of white existence. And it sounds hard in the beginning, but what
does that mean?
Well, I'm going to explain. When we get together, sometimes people are wondering, what is it that they are doing? Like when Black folks gather without the presence of white America, there's often a sentiment of like, what are they doing? You know, when we talk about HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, which were created because PWIs, predominantly white institutions, wouldn't educate us. When they started doing it, white people wanted to go to those universities because they wanted to understand, why do you have to have this university? And it's the existence.
Yeah. I don't think people, nobody I know thinks that way. I mean, people like to hang out with people like them. So
okay, and I think that that's good, right? But what I'm saying is, just as you have made the statement, I don't think it's that way. A lot of the things that we've thought about are because they're perceptions, right? We perceive things and we think that those perceptions are reality.
Yep.
But go ahead. So this time goes so fast. I am loving this conversation. And I think that having these types of conversations are important because I think that we need to understand something. Black people are not trying to be forever wounded, forever in this bubble. I'm never going to make it. The man has kept me down. I think that you'll find small folks and fractions of folks that may feel that way. And I think that's in any people group that have suffered any type of trauma. But the reality of the situation is, I think that many Black folks who are in their bag, and that's a good thing, doing their thing, that are living in this world, understand that there has to be a hope element to the struggle that has been experienced in the past. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to put an S on their chest to come in and save the day. But we have to be the answer to the problems and the issues that we see in our own community. Thank you guys for continuing tuning in. God bless you. Grace and peace.